And now we are going to introduce our fabulous speaker. So it was not long after he got married that Clair began to realize that he was terrible at dealing with conflict. During that time as an undergraduate at Weber State University, he began to explore communication studies courses to try and find new ways of dealing with his conflicts rather than just trying to avoid them. He also felt a call towards teaching, so after graduation, he taught as an adjunct for 2 years before going back to school for his master's degree. He attended the University of Montana, where he continued exploring his interest in communication and conflict. While pursuing a doctoral degree from the University of Utah, Clair also completed a graduate certificate program in conflict resolution. Clair is the founder of Canfield Conflict and Collaboration Consulting and has now been teaching, training, and consulting for over 18 years. He has been at Utah State University for 5 years and is a senior lecturer in the Philosophy, Languages, and Communication Studies department. He lives in Perry with his wife and 3 daughters. One of those daughters is partially responsible for his reputation as the hair pretties guy from a story told during his TEDx talk at USU that has now been viewed on YouTube over 140,000 times.
And I'm just going to repeat that, the hair pretties. Keep that in mind.
Clair is passionate about the possibilities that conflict has to show us what matters most to us and to create opportunities for beauty and change.
Very kind introduction. Is anyone like I used to be, where you kind of recognize you're not very good at managing conflict? Okay, so yeah, my way of dealing with it in the past was just to try and avoid it completely. How about you? A couple hands here went up. Avoidance as well? Yeah, okay, I feel you, you're my people. I know exactly what that is like. I used to have kind of the championship belt of avoiding. I had all the tactics. Maybe you've tried pretending like you don't have conflict, like denying that it exists, right? Just hoping that it will go away somehow magically. Or even if you know it's there, just choose not to talk about it. Even if you know the other person knows. Even if you know that they know that you know that they know, you're still not going to talk about it. But yet, you probably deal with it on a pretty regular basis, right? What are some of the most common sources of conflict for you? Where do you see it? Yeah.
My roommates don't do the dishes.
Oh, they don't? You may be the only, of course, you are not the only person that has ever had conflict over the dishes. That, in fact, is one of the most common places. And on this campus, so I've worked with the resident housing assistants around campus, and they keep track of kind of conflict and what roommates fight about. Semester after semester after semester, dishes is number 1 on the list, right? I saw another hand over here somewhere. Yeah.
I was going to say group projects.
Yeah, I once saw this meme that said, like, when I die, please have my college group mates lower me into the grave so they can let me down just one more time. Right? Like, sometimes, like, you're the only one doing all of the work. Yeah, that can be a source of conflict. Anybody else? Yeah.
Like, a lot of political ideology is clashing, and especially for someone, I'm focusing a lot on social justice work, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity to clash with that.
Yeah. When was the last time you didn't see a fight on Facebook over something, right?
Or on campus discussion boards, or wherever they may be.
Yeah. Now, this is pretty challenging for me because I am excited about talking with people about conflict, but the people I'm talking with about conflict are often not nearly as excited about it as I am. Right? Even though you may kind of intuitively know or understand, or somebody's explained to you, hey, conflict has the potential to be positive. You've probably heard that before, right? Why? How is it that conflict can potentially be positive? Yeah.
It opens up channels for communication.
Okay, so we might be able to then talk about something that we are not discussing because of conflict. Good. That's a good example. Yeah.
It can motivate positive change.
Yeah, change oftentimes does not happen unless we feel uncomfortable. And conflict often makes us feel uncomfortable enough to create some change. That's a great example. Anyone else? Yeah.
I feel like it can strengthen a relationship because there's more confidence between both parties that you could be faced with a challenge and overcome it.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. But even if you understand that that's true, if the way you feel about conflict is really negative, it's hard to want to do that, right? I got some papers. Is it okay if I get some help to pass some of these out? I'm going to have you do something on the blank side of this. I want you to get one of these. Okay, while these are coming around to you, I want you to think about maybe a current conflict that you have, or one that you've had somewhat recently, or one that was really significant or intense. And I just want you to put yourself back into that place emotionally. Think about what it was like for you, what you were thinking about, how that felt. Just kind of put yourself back into the position of having been in that conflict experience. Okay? Everybody there? This is the one from this morning, maybe? Or last week? Whatever it is, find yourself back in that place. Now, I want you to write a metaphor for conflict. One that reflects your experiences and how it feels to be in conflict. So conflict is like, you do a simile type of metaphor. Right? What would be a metaphor that accurately captures what it feels like for you to be in the experience of conflict? Okay? And write that down on that paper. Everybody get one? Anybody missing one? Unfortunately, you're writing tutors, and so I don't have to explain what a metaphor is. Sometimes it takes us a minute to work through that. What's your personal metaphor for conflict? Now go ahead and sit with that and work through it as long as it takes. Oftentimes it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's okay if it takes a minute. There's no wrong way of doing this. Just make sure it resonates with your experiences. Now let's get some examples of your metaphors. Conflict is...
So the most heated conflict I've ever had was
Yeah.
because my roommates made me clean the oven and I was mad about it because I did it the last year.
Yeah.
So conflict is like a dirty oven. If somebody doesn't clean it, it builds up and grows, but nobody wants to clean the oven because it's the worst job.
Okay, that's a great metaphor, right? Because it's personal, it's somewhat literal in one sense, right? You've had a conflict over a dirty oven, but for you it's sort of like having one. Nobody wants to deal with it.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't deal with it, it just builds up and gets worse. Yeah, great. Excellent metaphor. Yeah.
My conflict was between friends that I have, and I had to get an issue resolved, and so
Yeah.
I wrote conflict is like walking into a knife.
Walking into a knife. Okay. Now, did you see that knife there?
Yeah.
So you're knowingly walking into the knife. And where's it poking you? Chest, eyeball, right in the stomach? Do you sometimes feel that in conflict? Yeah, great metaphor. Who else? Yeah.
So conflict is a one-way mirror.
Talk to me about that.
More times than not, conflict is a result of perspective
Yeah.
and a difference of opinions. So oftentimes when we're trying to, well, not that we're trying to butt heads with people, but as we're butting heads with people, we don't understand that they may not see the same things that we're seeing, or they may see it differently. Like a one-way mirror. You know, for one person, it's just reflecting, you know, what they're seeing.
Yeah.
For the other person, they can see through it and see a different perspective.
Excellent. Good.
conflict is cold water.
Talk to me about how that best describes your experiences with it.
Well, because there's something kind of tantalizing about cold water, just like there's something kind of tantalizing about drama. And like the minute you get in, you just want to get out. But if you stay in, you'll become acclimated to it, and you typically leave the water better off than you were when you're before you're in it. So.
Okay. Now notice conflicts are very personal, right? And so yours is reflecting something about conflict that might be a little bit different. Like the way you described cold water, somewhat tantalizing. It's not like walking into a knife, right? So it's good to recognize that that is a personal reflection of how you think and feel about it. It's good. A couple more. Some more metaphors. Yeah.
Mine is not a metaphor, it's a simile, but.
Okay. That works for me.
Conflict is like Sisyphus pushing the rock
Sisyphus, yeah.
up the hill and never gets to the top.
I forget how to spell Sisyphus, but constantly pushing it up and just rolling back down. It's a good one. Who else? A few more. Yeah. What's yours? Yep.
Oh, I said Mushu. I mean, conflict is Mushu with the stone dragon.
Stone dragons. Okay, tell me about that one.
Well, he just like in the movie, he's trying to wake up the stone dragon, right? And he just keeps hitting it with the thing, and he's yelling at him, and it's not working, and so then Mushu has to go do it himself.
Okay. So it feels frustrating?
Yeah, or just like if you're trying to get the other person to do something, and then they're not doing it, so you have to do it yourself. But
yeah, that's good. One more. One from this table. Yeah.
I said conflict is being stuck between a cliff and a bear.
Oh.
So like, you don't want to fight the bear because that's scary, but you also don't want to jump off a cliff because that's worse. So you have to make a decision if you're going to stick with the conflict or just face the bear. Like, you have to make a choice, and they're both going to be bad.
There doesn't seem to be a winning choice there,
Yeah.
right? But you got to make the
Yeah.
choice. Like, which of these two things do I want?
Yeah.
Do I want to be mauled, or do I want to splatter up at the rocks? That's good. It's a good conflict metaphor. What else? A couple more. These are fantastic. One from over on this table.
Oh, this one.
I can share.
Yeah.
I feel like it's sitting in a dark room and you don't want to leave because you don't want to face whatever's on the other side of the door.
So the conflict is on the other side of the door. You're in a dark room. And
But you
just
know
want
it'll
to
be
keep
light
out.
once you get to the other side, but you just don't want to face whatever it is.
Yeah, that's good. So, as you look at these, even though they're very personal and they've got distinct differences, what do you see as some of the common themes that emerge out of these metaphors? It's a small sample of this group, but what do you see?
Danger.
Danger. Where do you see that?
Everyone.
Yeah, knives, knives, and Sisyphus getting rolled on, right? Cliff and a bear. There's definitely some danger there. What else do you see? Yeah.
There kind of seems to be like a time element. Like, I'm good right now, but you never know how long that's going to last. You know, with the bear, like, you might have a couple seconds, a couple minutes. With cold water, it's as long as you can stand on the shore, kind of thing.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Yeah.
There seems to be a sense of utility with a couple of them.
That no matter what you, what's the point?
I
No
mean,
matter what you
literally-
do.
Yeah, literally Sisyphus, right? Like, what's the point there?
What's the point? Good. Yeah.
There's a lot of fear.
Yeah. Some strong emotions that come up in conflict. Fear is frequently one of those. So I have to really
Yeah, it's all negative and threatening. Like, give it 2 more seconds and you're gonna get hit with that knife, or that bear's gonna come find you. Like, it's all very negative.
Yeah, and although there are some exceptions, I've gathered thousands upon thousands of metaphors from people, and if there was one theme that was most dominant, or the broadest theme across all those metaphors, is that they're primarily negative. Right? And oftentimes they're negative to the point of death. I see a lot of death metaphors. It's not uncommon to have knife stabbing, you could bleed out, right? A bear definitely has the capacity to kill you or falling to the bottom of the cliff, which says something about the intensity of which we feel this. So intense sometimes that it feels as if we're dying, even though you know that it's unlikely that that's going to happen, right? You logically know your conflicts, most of them are not going to kill you. But yet, your brain's reaction to it is almost like a triggered trauma response, where you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Anybody do that? When you get in conflict, you find that your brain sort of shuts down. We know what the brain looks like on trauma, and in conflict, frequently, the frontal lobes of your brain shut down. You stop seeing activity. And what's happening in the frontal lobes? That's your decision making, right? There's also a part of your language center that shuts down for some people. How many of you have ever just kind of frozen up in a conflict and 2 hours later you're like, oh, I should have said that. Or 2 weeks later, because at the moment it's almost as if you can't say anything. Or some of you might come out fighting, right? That's your trauma response. It's like, I see someone coming at me with a knife, so I'm going to pull out a gun, right? We're going to be Indiana Jones, and if you want to be brandishing your sword, I don't want no part of that, so I think I'll shoot you first. You know, some people do that in conflict, right? Who thinks the best defense is a good offense? Yeah, go at them harder, right? And then they'll back away. Or some of us just want to flee. Just get away from it. Try to escape. It's normal for conflict to feel this intense, but that's also then potentially problematic. Because even if you know, oh, conflict can bring you closer in a relationship, it can open up communication. You can talk about things you otherwise couldn't have. Even if you know that, if it feels pointless, dangerous, scary, why would you ever bother? Or you might handle it in a way that doesn't bring connection or doesn't help you figure stuff out. And that's the place that many of us get stuck in conflict. And then we try to deal with it as best we can, but because of the way we feel about it, our best efforts sometimes don't work very well. I'm curious, what are some things that you have tried in your conflicts? Right? How do you respond? How do you try to deal with it? And you might even do this frequently, and it just doesn't work very well. Yeah?
Passive-aggressive sticky notes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're the one that leaves the note on the microwave, right? Your mother does not work here. Please clean up after yourself. Signed, concerned. Right? Yeah, yeah. Passive-aggressiveness, right? It's like, I really want something to be different, but I want plausible deniability or something that will make it feel a little less intense. Yeah, that's a good one. Has that worked for you very well? Anyone had a lot of success with passive-aggressive behaviors and getting change that you want in your life? Yeah, neither have I. I tried it. Good, what else? What else have you tried? Yeah.
This probably goes under like passive-aggressive things, but sometimes I'll like barricade whatever it is that's causing the conflict. Like last night, my roommates overflowed the trash can.
Yeah.
So I took out the trash and then I put something on top of the trash can so they couldn't use it.
Yeah, now what were you doing there? Like, yeah!
Yeah. Sorry, the conflict in my apartment isn't dishes, it's the trash.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Ideas for the future.
Okay. But let's ask, is it working very well for you?
No, they just started putting things on top of it.
Yeah, I also find passive aggressive, although it may in the moment feel somewhat satisfying, like, yeah, I'll block the trash. It doesn't actually work in creating any sort of long-term change or understanding or connection at all, right? Yeah.
To some extent, like mind reading, not literally, that'd be dope, but
But
like
attempting
trying
to?
to figure out what they're thinking or
Yeah.
why they're thinking it instead of just like asking
Yeah.
somebody.
How many of you don't have a conversation, but you just try to figure out from everything that has occurred, and so you have a 2-hour conversation with someone about a 2-word text, like, what did that mean? Do you think it could have meant this or it could have meant that? Because if it meant that, then I definitely need to head this off at the pass, right? And so we spend all this time trying to figure out what it is without ever having a conversation. How's that working?
My therapist says bad.
Okay. Let's go down.
Yes.
Good. What else? What else have you tried that absolutely does not work? Who's tried defensiveness? Just build a wall to keep yourself safe. How many of you, when you see conflict coming, you're like, oh, I can tell my roommate's got an issue. And so you start preparing the mental list, the counter, what do they call it when you've got someone on the stand? The rebuttal. Like you've got the 29 reasons, right? That their 2 things that they're complaining about are either irrelevant or they're doing much worse than you are, right? Anybody get a little defensive? Tried that one? What else have you tried? Yeah.
So I get the opposite. Sometimes I'll get like an overwhelming sense of guilt and just start apologizing for everything from how I wear my socks to how I dot my I's.
Yeah. How many of you, instead of like trying to get the other person to change, you're just like, all things in the universe are my fault. Right? If you're unhappy, that's on me. I'm sorry, I'm the absolute worst, and you just give in to whatever they want. Anybody do that? I had a colleague who was an extreme accommodator. One time she was in graduate school and she had the bottom apartment, someone else had the top apartment, but they had a shared laundry area, and the washer and dryer were down on the first floor, and the upstairs person would wash their laundry at like 2 in the morning, and then there was a really loud buzzer on the dryer that would go off and it would wake her up, but the upstairs person apparently didn't hear it or whatever. Do you know what she would do? She went and folded her laundry for her and placed it on top of the dryer. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that also as like as a strategy for dealing with conflict, right? Yeah.
Related now, sometimes I'll just convince myself that whatever the conflict was about, it's actually fine. Like I can live with it. It doesn't matter. I'll just deal with it.
Yep, I will swallow my emotions, I will suppress my needs, and I will just pretend like none of this matters. Yeah. Yeah.
I tend to jump between one of 2 things. I'll either play the victim, play the woe is me card, or I'll sometimes lash out. Your story reminded me, I lived in a basement apartment last semester, and the people upstairs, I think they had elephants there. Or sometimes at absurd hours of the evening / early morning, at like 3 o'clock, they would start singing and playing, just screaming and laughing. And so I kept the broom by my bed and would hit the ceiling until they stopped.
Some of us aren't passive aggressive, we're aggressive.
We're aggressive.
So I'm going to bang the ceiling, or I'm going to block the garbage can. It's a little bit more aggressive than passive, right? A little bit more. One time I had a neighbor whose very large dog or very small horse, I'm not sure which one it was, would consistently come over to my yard and poop in it. And my children were afraid of the dog because it was taller than they were. And also, I did not like mowing the lawn and finding these presents that it had left for me. So I talked to the neighbor, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll make sure it doesn't do that anymore. And then it kept happening, and then I talked again, and she's like, oh, just bring it over to my house. I'll take care of it. I'm like, I'm not going to do that, And then it kept happening. One day, I was like, took a shovel, and I picked it up, and I went and I put it on the side porch of her house. Yeah, that was aggressive. That's not how I want to be neighbors with someone, right?
But did it fix it?
And that sometimes is the seduction of that stuff, right? Is we hope that it's going to work. No. Because even though the dog stopped coming over and pooping in my yard, it wasn't about that. Conflict is not really about what you think it's about. Like if you want to change the way it feels, it has to start with the way you think about conflict, and then it will change how you deal with it. Right now, you're doing the very best you know how, given the way you feel about it, right? Doesn't it make sense that if I think it's being stuck between a cliff and a bear, I'm going to try to avoid that completely? Even though that might not work, that makes sense, doesn't it? And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try to do the least painful thing possible and just get it over with as quickly as possible. Or if I think it's more like cold water, it's like if I get used to this, then oh, I'm stronger, then I might do something a little bit more aggressive. I'm guessing you're not quite the passive, I don't know your name, but
Nate.
You probably don't do quite as much the passive aggressive, a little bit more aggressive?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, it was a guess. I was wrong.
Hey, we got conflict.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm good with that. But we got to figure out like what will actually work. And oftentimes what will work isn't possible as long as that's the way we feel about it. So the challenge for me is not to try and tell you, here's what you ought to do. Right? Did that work? Try the aggressive thing. But rather, how do I change the way I think and feel about it so then I have more options available to me? Right now, you're doing the very best you can with the options you have available to you. If you can find a different way of approaching it, it opens up many more options. So the first thing to do to get that additional options or to open it up is to recognize that none of your conflicts are about what you think they're about. Take a second on that paper, and I want you to write down what your needs are and the things that you value in life. Needs are what you require to be at full functioning. Right? What we desire is what we think is important, what we pursue. So I want you to take, do you need some papers? Yep. So I want you to take a second and identify what's important to you and what do you need to be your best self, to be functioning fully. Okay. Probably comes pretty quickly. What do you got? What's a couple examples? What really matters to you? Yeah.
Is it healthy relationships?
Relationships. Raise your hand if somewhere on your list you have a relationship or a connection with something other than yourself. Yeah. I feel like we're hardwired for that. We need connection, relationships. Good. What else have you got? I saw another hand over here. Yeah.
A sense of purpose.
Purpose. What am I doing here? I want to have a reason for existing, or it's something that drives me or that calls me forward. Excellent.
Sleep.
Sleep. Yeah, why is that important to you?
I always feel that I'm more cranky and
Yeah.
less of the person I want to be when I don't.
Yeah, you don't really function, and you want to be more than that. You want to be more than a sleepwalking zombie, right? Excellent. Okay, raise your hand if you've got dishes on there. Dishes on your list of most important things. Nope. Yet. Somebody mentioned that already, and I already told you how everybody has conflict on this campus over dishes with their roommates. And I know about this because I've had 4 decades worth of conflicts over dishes, because I've been alive a long time, so I've had lots of conflicts about dishes. Starting when I was a little kid, I fought with my parents frequently about having to do the dishes. My mom had this funny joke. She thought it was funny. I thought it was the worst joke ever. People would ask her, how many kids do you have? And she says, I have 8 dishwashers. Funny, Mom. We don't have any dishwashers, but you got 8 kids, and we were in charge of washing all of them. So we had to hand wash dishes for 10 people in my family. That's a lot of dishes, particularly when we don't go out to eat, and that's potentially 3 meals a day. I hated doing dishes, but because there's 7 days in a week and 8 kids in my family, I could totally gaslight my own mother and be like, oh, it's not my turn. No, I switched with so-and-so, or remember I did it 2 days ago, or I would find a way to try and get out of it. And if I couldn't, I would just purposefully do a poor job, like not rinse the dishes very well, or I'd hide dirty dishes in the oven. Yeah, so, because I didn't want to do the dishes. But eventually I moved out of the house, I went to college, I roomed with my 3 best friends, and unlike a lot of people who are dish poor, anybody here dish poor? You got 1 plate, 1 spoon, 1 knife. You're lucky if you've got a toaster. Yeah, so that's dish poor. I was dish rich, right? Because I had like 4 boxes of dishes that I took to college. I worked at the DI, which is like a thrift shop, for a couple of weeks before I went to college. I don't want to talk about why it was only a couple of weeks. Anyway, I worked there for a couple of weeks, and they would get so many donations of dishes that they would have to just cycle through them. So when they were about to get rid of all these dishes, I was like, I will give your unwanted dishes a home, right? So I had 4 boxes of dishes that I took to college, just cupboards full. So that meant on Monday, you want a bowl of cereal, get a bowl out, pour some Lucky Charms, eat it, stick it in the sink. Tuesday, get out another bowl, right? Wednesday, get out another bowl. Thursday, get out another bowl. On Friday, sometimes my roommates would be like eating Lucky Charms out of a mixing bowl with a wooden spoon and drinking Tang out of a mason jar, but we still hadn't washed a single dish, right? Both sinks are full. It's coming out onto the countertops, and there is funky fermenting Lucky Charm milk at the bottom of the sink, and half-eaten burritos with congealed ketchup on the side of it because my roommate thought that was an appropriate condiment for burritos. I don't know. He's running for governor now. I don't know if that's part of his platform, but I hope he has found some better condiments for his burritos. But that is what our apartment would look like by Friday. And then all 3 of them went home because they lived close by to get like a good cooked meal and wash their clothes, and they left all the dishes behind. And I was staying there because I was dating my future spouse, and I would spend time with her. Do you think she wants to come over to my house with the funky fermenting Lucky Charm milk? And the burritos? No. So I would have to like don a hazmat suit for 2.5 hours and try and wash my way through that catastrophic looking mess that I had in the kitchen so that she'd be willing to come over and step foot inside my apartment. And when they came home on Sunday night, do you think they thanked me? Nope, just got out another bowl and poured some Lucky Charms, right? I ended up having conflict with my roommates. But I did eventually marry the person I was dating in college. So now we won't have conflict over dishes, right? Because love conquers all. You're all giggling. Yeah, that sounds delightful, doesn't it? One time I did the dishes. She came home and she looked in the kitchen. She's like, why didn't you finish the dishes? I'm like, I did. I washed all of them. She's like, well, you didn't. Rinse out the sink apparently doesn't count. It doesn't count if you don't rinse out the sink afterwards. Like you did nothing, right? And now I got 3 kids of my own and an actual dishwasher, but guess who argues with me every single time I tell them it's their turn to do the dishes? It's not my turn, I did it yesterday. And they're also dirtying 15 cups a day. Like, you don't need a new cup every time you get a glass of water. Just use the same cup, right? It's not dirty, it was just water. And I've come full circle 44 years later. Maybe it's not about the dishes. It's not about the dishes. Our conflicts are driven by our needs, the things that we desire and we require to be at full functioning. And dishes is not one of those things. None of our conflicts are really about what we think they're about. Is there a way to get this up? I don't know if somebody can bring the image up for me.
Figured it out what?
You can figure it out? Okay. If you think about it, when I was a kid, why do you think I was so upset about doing the dishes? Because I can do them now. In fact, it would take me a lot less time to do them now than getting my children to do them. Right? Why do you think I was so set against not doing the dishes? Any thoughts? Yeah.
You don't like being told what to do.
Exactly. I'm 10 years old, and I will live my life the way I want to, right? I mean, it would not have mattered what they asked me to do. I was going to resist because I didn't want to be told what to do. It was about my independence and my autonomy. That's a need. that people have to really be at full functioning. We want to feel like we get to make choices for ourselves, that we are self-determining. And if something threatens that, we will have conflict. And it might be over something like the dishes, but it has nothing to do with dishes. What about with my roommates? Why do you think it bothered me? Because I had lots of dishes and I could have just left them. Why was I so upset? Yeah?
Maybe because, did you feel like they weren't appreciating you
Yep.
doing the dishes?
And they didn't respect me, and I thought we were better friends than that. Yeah, it hurt. And when they didn't say anything, I was like, right? Like, why? How would good friends do that to you? That's what I was thinking in my head. I felt disrespected, unseen, unappreciated. Yeah.
Well, maybe because you also spent so much time trying to avoid it when you were younger, you came to view it as like a way more important task than they might have viewed it as.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, whatever that would be for you is going to be your source of conflict. It might be different from mine, but it's definitely not about dishes for either of us. And it wasn't dishes for them either. I mean, I know for sure it wasn't about the dishes because I actually fixed the problem so I didn't have to do the dishes all the time. I created the chore wheel because I'm a genius, right? I'm a first year college student. And so I made a wheel with 4 different sections: bathroom boy, living room boy, garbage boy, and kitchen boy. 4 boys, 4 jobs. Rotate the wheel at midnight on, you've done the wheel, rotate the wheel at midnight on Sunday, and now I only have to do the dishes once every 4 weeks. Everybody has a job. Everybody's responsible. Great, right? Except they started making passive-aggressive comments like, oh, I guess I'm bathroom boy. Time to clean the bathroom. Right? And another one left 4 bags of garbage around the garbage can till exactly 11:59 on Sunday night and then took them out. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so I got exactly what I said I wanted but was not satisfied. How many of you have ever done that? Gotten exactly what you said you wanted in conflict and were completely dissatisfied? Because it wasn't about that. You can't get your needs met for something like relationship and respect through dishes. We're having the wrong conversations. Did you know people fight about which way to put the toilet paper roll on? Apparently there's a right way. Right? Yeah, you're like, yes, there is. There is a right way to put it so it rolls over the top, right? Yes! Do you really think anybody cares that much about toilet paper? Yes, you do, but have you had really intense conversations or conflicts over stuff that you then describe to other people as like, we had the biggest conflict, it was over the stupidest thing, or it was over the smallest thing? Have you ever said that before? Yeah, because your conflict isn't really about toilet paper. What bothers you about the toilet paper?
It's just wrong. Like on the bottom, it's just weird. It's so hard to access. Yeah, we have another experience.
So how come you don't just switch it instead of having a conflict over who it? But yet you're talking about it in here.
I've never had.
You brought it up.
But you're the one that had an emotional reaction to it. Right? We want all of our conflict because they reflect something about what's important to us. Or something that we need. Is that something that's important to some of you in conflict? You just want to be right? And if someone tells me, no, I can put the toilet paper on the dip, there's no right way to do it, and you're like, yes, there is. Yeah, that might be important to you. Can you all see that on the? Oh, look at that! They're everywhere.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
What's that?
Mirror.
Yes, nice. Okay, so Harry Potter is trying to escape being caught. He was in the strictest section of the library, and they were after him, so he runs into this room, and he finds the Mirror of Erised. And he looks into it, and what does he see? His parents. His dead parents. Oh, spoiler alert, sorry. Sorry, if you didn't know, they're dead. So he looks in the mirror and he sees his dead parents, and he is overwhelmed, right? There they are. So he runs to his best friend Ron and tells him, you got to come look at this. Brings him in, looks in the mirror, and what does Ron see? Yeah, he's not. He doesn't see Harry's dead parents. He sees himself holding up the Quidditch cup. And he's the best boy, or head boy, or whatever, right? I'm best boy, right? Now, if you can see above the mirror, there's some writing there. Does anybody speak Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Yeah? Can you read that for us right there? What does that say? Can you read it?
Oh, I can't read it.
Okay, can you read it? Go ahead and just read it. Erised. Nope, you're not going to try. Okay, I'll do it. Erised stra eru opt ube katre opt on wohusi. I'm really good at Harry Potter, right? What does that mean? Nothing. But if you hold up words in front of a mirror, what happens to them? Yeah, they get switched, right? So read it backwards, but realize that the spacing is off. I show not your face, but your heart's desire. Ooh, yeah. You look in the mirror and you see what's important to you. That's what conflict does. You have conflict because you want conflict. As much as you may have experienced it in ways that are uncomfortable or unhealthy, you're still having conflict because there's something you need or desire or want. And that is totally normal. In fact, the only way to get rid of all your conflicts, there's one way, only one way. Stop caring about everything and everybody. And you will stop having conflicts. You will not care which way the toilet paper roll goes on. You won't. As long as you don't care, you won't have conflict. Don't care about other people. You'll stop having conflict with them. Right? Don't care about yourself. You'll stop having conflict. You just have to stop caring. I do not recommend that, though, as a life strategy. Right? Right? You desire purpose. You're going to have conflict because that's something you want for yourself. It's something that makes you feel full and alive. And conflict is a way for you to see what's most important to you. It will reflect it back to you. Why was I having a conflict with my parents? Because it was important to me that I begin to feel like I have autonomy and independence and I make my own choices. Why did I have it with my roommates? Because I care about relationships. And I want relationships that are built upon respect, appreciation. I wanted that. But I can't get it through dishes. I have to have a conversation about what actually matters. But it's a little tricky to read things backwards, right? And our conflicts sometimes flip stuff on us. And then we're talking about dishes and focused on that, when in actuality what it's really about with my spouse is I just want you to like me no matter how I do them. Even if I don't rinse out the sink. And with my kids, it is definitely not about dishes. I'm trying to teach them respect because my identity as a father is really important to me. It would be so much easier for me to just do them on my own. But I care about their development and growth. I care about how I see myself as a father. And so I have conflict, but it's not about dishes. So as you look at your conflicts right now that you're having, take a look at that sheet, and you're going to see some connections there, right? If purpose is really important to you, do you notice some conflicts you've got in your life around that? Yeah. That's the first step. When I started to recognize conflicts showed me what was important to me, it helped me realize, wow, conflict is helping me to see what is important and valuable. It can help me to get what I want. But it's really challenging to see it in the moment. What would be a way for you to be able to start remembering that when you face your own conflicts? How do you start to see what they're really about? Any ideas? Anybody try that?
Verbalizing why it makes you feel the way you feel, so trying to like
Yeah.
talk through the
Yeah.
deeper cause.
Emotions are really helpful in helping us recognize what's going on with ourselves. Our values and our emotions are really closely tied. That's good. Anyone else? Yeah.
It's a matter of labeling that thing that is the conflict. Well, not the conflict, but the so for instance, Francis Lester, we can talk about the toilet paper. That whole argument isn't about the toilet paper. The argument is about somebody respecting your opinion enough to care enough just to turn the toilet paper over because it matters to you. Right? And so if you label that as something, and then you can label that thing and say, I just want to be appreciated.
Yeah.
That I just want to be respected to the point that my opinion matters.
Yeah.
On a little
Toilet
thing.
paper can be about respect, relationship, appreciation. It's really not about toilet paper.
Right, but as soon as you label that thing, it becomes a thing that you can deal with in a way.
Yeah.
Right, you can put it someplace, or you can care about it, or decide not to care about it. But
Yeah.
now you know what that thing is, and you can.
Naming has power.
Right, labeling.
Yeah. Have you all ever heard of the children's story Rumpelstiltskin? Yeah, y'all remember what that's about? Little kind of gremlin dude who could spin straw into gold, but it like will cost you your firstborn child or something like that. It's kind of dark, right? A lot of those older children's stories are. But what was it that could give a person power over Rumpelstiltskin so that he would do what you want? What? You got to know his name. And if you can name him, you have power over it. If you can start naming what your conflict is really about, it gives you power over now doing something about it, right? It gives you power to think about it differently, manage it differently. Now, we may not have the kind of time necessary to go into all the different ways that you can manage it differently than you do right now, but I've got kind of a little cheat sheet for you that includes a process that helps you switch from talking about toilet paper and dishes to talking about what matters. And doing it in a way that conflict helps move us closer to what we desire, like connection. If you look down at the bottom of the page, there's a series of things labeled gifts. When you engage in conflict in a particular way, it has the capacity to give you a gift, to give the other person a gift, and to facilitate something between you. But it requires doing the work. So for example, ownership is a really helpful way to get unstuck from blaming. Anybody get stuck blaming? Yeah, because blaming just doesn't seem to work very well. Have you ever had somebody come into the writing center and be like, you didn't give me good feedback and I got a poor grade on this. Like, why didn't you tell me that I should use periods and commas? Right? And now this is your fault. How does it feel when somebody blames you in conflict? Not good. And I get defensive. I don't know about you, but I get defensive. And blaming causes people, right, to respond in a way that does not help you get what you want. Ownership helps you get unstuck from that. Ownership is saying, here's my emotions, my needs, my part in all of this. So what if they came in and said, hey, I was wondering if you could help me. I'm confused about what I did wrong on this. I really want to do well in my writing and get a better grade. Now, I came in one time, but you're right, I did not come back after I rewrote the draft. I just turned it in. And I got this poor grade, and I want to do well, so I'm wondering if you can help me understand what I missed there. How does that make you feel? If I come at you like that. It encourages cooperation. I'm like, yep, let's help you. Let's sit down. That is what I'm here for. Let's figure this stuff out. Because they took ownership. The gift that gives to them is empowerment. Now they can do something about it. If you're blaming other people, you're stuck. You can't do anything. You take ownership, now I have choices. And that lets the other person feel like they are competent instead of, you suck at being a tutor. You didn't help me write. right? It threatens our own competency when people blame us. So that's just one example how part of this process, this vocab process, helps you unlock the gifts that conflict can bring when you engage in vulnerability and ownership and the communication process, acceptance and boundaries. Right? I think you're finished at 5:30, is that right? So this is a kind of difficult language to learn. I've been working on this stuff for about 12 years, and I still can't do it all the time, particularly with my 13-year-old daughter. I struggle with her, right? But I know when I get stuck. I know now how I get stuck and what doesn't work. And I've got a process that can help me get unstuck, and it truly does bring the gifts. When I have dealt with her with vulnerability and ownership and communication process and acceptance and boundaries, it has completely changed our conversations and our relationship. It actually has brought us closer. I've had experiences that are really close to my heart that came out of conflict. And that started to then shift the way I felt about it. Now I don't think of it as something that's going to kill me. I used to. Now I think of it as something that can help me get what I want most in life. And that's what I want for you and for the people that you work with. Because it's both about having your needs met and also helping them meet theirs. Right? Okay, I wish you well. Thanks for
Anybody have any questions? We've got a couple of minutes and then we've got to head out. This is a lot to think about, huh? I see a lot of perplexed looks and a lot of, what am I going to do looks, and a lot of smiles. So thank you, Claire. All right, everybody, eat more food, and thanks for being here.